Alchemist.
Hey, you like money? Who doesn't? That's why you pick Alchemist. Common misconception about Alchemist. He's not the yellow ogre, he's actually the little guy riding in the back. Grievel's Greed is his innate, which means he gets extra gold upon killing a unit. If he kills another unit shortly after, he gets even more money. He also gets extra funds from bounty runes. This means that you should really fight for those early bounty runes before the horn sounds. I mean, that's what you should be doing anyway, but if you do manage to secure 3 or 4 before the horn sounds, you pretty much just one lane before even stepping foot inside. He can also take the seed money facet to start the game with extra gold. And I don't know about you, but who am I to say no to free money? His Q is Acid Spray, drizzle it in an area, forcing enemies to take damage over time and get reduced armor. Unstable Concoction is his W. He charges up a flask that he can throw to stun and damage an enemy hero and opponents around said target. The stun and damage gets stronger the longer the ability is charged, and Alk gets a move speed boost while holding onto the potion. If you don't throw it in time, you stun yourself like an idiot. Corrosive Weaponry gives his attacks a stacking debuff. When he hits an enemy, he reduces their move speed and base attack damage. Chemical Rage is his ultimate, dispelling himself of most debuffs, making him attack faster, giving him bonus move speed and health regen for a period of time. It is a literal steroid, but unlike a lot of other steroid abilities in the game, like Sven's ultimate or TB's Metamorphosis, it doesn't have the longest downtime, so you can use it for farming if you know what you're doing. Shard gives him the ability Berserk Potion, which gives a target teammate of choice a weaker version of these effects. The Mixologist facet makes both his Concoction and Berserk Potion recharge faster when he's in ult form. It's honestly a pretty good facet for a fighting Alchemist, but the early item advantage from seed money is already pretty good. His Scepter is the most unique in the game because it allows him to give Aghanim Scepter to other teammates, bestowing the full effect, stats and all. For every Scepter given, Alk gets a bit of extra damage and spell amp. For talents, take the Acid Spray armor reduction at 10. It's a safer bet all around and helps speed up your farming. Acid Spray armor to teammates is more consistent at 15. Alt Bat is stronger if you're going for a right click build, otherwise take the other one at 20, and then either at 25. Both are equally good, but I'll usually take the move speed. Alchemist is the fastest farmer in the game thanks to his innate. There are a lot of ways to play Alk, but the tried and true way is to build Radiance to accelerate your farm, Blink to join fights, and BKB to survive them. Then you can get into luxury item territory like Abyssal Blade, a Soul Cuirass, or even Manta style. There's nothing you can't build because of your insane gold generation. Just remember that you can donate scepters once you're 6 slotted at 30 minutes. Alk relies on his insane regen from his ultimate to stay alive, so anti-heal like Doom and AA hard counter him. He also hates heroes that can lock him down because despite his ogre's big body, he's fairly susceptible to getting bursted. Silences are also really annoying because it feels really bad to stun yourself. Pick Alchemist if you like the sound of clinking coin and know how to use a gold advantage to win a game.
Warden.
One of the more difficult heroes in the game to play, Warden is a challenge to learn but rewarding to master. His innate gives him a short regen rune buff after activating any rune, meaning he gets extra value out of controlling them. You should always be controlling runes anyway as a mid laner, but this is a nice little incentive and cherry on top. He also has 2 facets, Order and Disorder, that completely change the way his spells work. Flux is a targeted debuff, slowing a target unit and damaging them if they're alone with no other enemy unit nearby. With Disorder, the damage is increased but the slow is weaker. Magnetic Field summons a bubble around himself, giving him bonus attack speed and evasion from attacks coming from outside the field. If there's an enemy right next to Warden when he casts the bubble, it pushes them away. Disorder replaces the attack speed and evasion with bonus attack range and damage. Note that the bubble bonuses are also shared with allied heroes inside. Shard increases the bubble radius and gives allied attacks traveling through the bubble increased projectile speed while decreasing the projectile speed of those coming from enemies. Spark Wraith is Ark's 3rd spell and lets him summon a Wraith to monitor an area and attack an enemy that comes within range. Once it does happen, the Wraith starts running at them, dealing damage and applying a slow once they finally catch up to the enemy. This spell deals bonus damage to non-hero units. Use it to secure ranged creep. Note there is an activation delay for this ability, so you can't just click on someone and have the Wraith run after them. Thankfully, the cast range on it is quite long. Disorder reduces the activation delay, speeds up the Wraith travel time, and increases the slow duration at the cost of some damage. Scepter makes the Spark Wraith spawn another one with reduced radius and duration after reaching its target. This gets really annoying in a team fight. Spark Wraith spam is not to be underestimated. His ultimate is Tempest Double. He creates a clone of himself that can use all of his basic abilities and most items with separate cooldowns. Note that the Double's abilities utilize the other facet for their stats, so if you chose Order at the start of the game, your double gets the Disorder version of your spells. The clone lasts quite a while, but if it is killed, it gives a gold bounty and the cooldown resets. If the double is too far away from Arc, it takes increased damage and becomes much easier to kill. Note that I'm not really an Warden player, so here are the most popular talents according to Dota buff. Flux cast range at 10, Magnetic Field bonuses at 15, Magnetic Field cooldown at 20, and no distance penalty at 25. Your first item as Warden is almost always Hand of Midas. You want to get it early on so that your double will be able to use it too. This effectively gives you 2 minuses for the price of 1. After this, Arc takes a bit of time to ramp up in strength since he needs a lot of items to start being terrifying. Flux your target of choice, slap a Wraith on him, Bubble up and do the exact same with your double. You pretty much gain double the duration on not just your spells, but items like Hex, Gleipnir, and Bloodthorn. Arc is a rare pick in pubs, and thus I don't know a lot about his counters, but I would say be wary of heroes that require you to hit multiple targets, like Naga, PL, and Brood, because you have like 0 spread damage and lockdown. Pick Arc Warden if you need a scaling mid laner and have a background in piano.
Ember Spirit.
Balance in all things except for himself. Ember Spirit is one of the best mid laners at the time of this video. Let's start with his ultimate, Fire Remnants. Ember can send out a Fire Remnant to a location which he can dash to, dealing damage. If multiple remnants are out, Ember dashes to all of them, ending at the one closest to your targeted location. The remnant travels at a speed relative to Ember's own move speed, so if he's slowed, they don't travel too fast. Ember gets multiple charges of these remnants too. Shard causes the remnants to burn nearby enemies, and when an enemy hero dies near Ember, he gets a bonus charge. Scepter increases the cast range, remnant speed, and maximum charges. Next, we get to his Searing Chains, his Q and lockdown tool. Ember throws out some flaming bolas to enemies nearby, rooting them and dealing damage per second. Chain Gang increases the number of units rooted, while also causing his fire remnants to release flaming chains as well. His Sleight of Fist is his W. Ember strikes at all enemies in a target location, dealing bonus damage to enemy heroes. Note that he can cast chains during this if you have fast hands to help you lock down targets from a distance. Double Impact lets Sleight of Fist hit one of its targets an extra time for a weaker strike, as long as he hits 2 or more. I prefer Chain Gang though because it does help your farming speed. His third ability is also his innate, Flame Guard. Ember passively has a burning aura and can activate this ability to increase the aura radius and damage, in addition to gaining a magic barrier to consume a portion of all magic damage taken. For talents, take the Flame Guard barrier for extra uptime at 10. It's a big chunk of your own damage, so you don't want it going away after a few spells from the enemy. Flame Guard DPS at 15, but take the chains duration if you got Chain Gang. Sleight of Fist damage at 20, but chain damage again if you got Chain Gang, and slight charges at 25. Pick Ember if your team needs skirmishing power or if you're trying to learn the hero. This guy's meta right now, but if you're comfortable with him, you can pick him even when he's not. Ember's kit is only as good as the person piloting him, and the more work you'll put into learning him, the more success you'll find. Being one of the Spirit Brothers, Ember zips around the battlefield with his Sleight and Remnants. He deals a lot of chip damage. You're not one-shotting people with his kit, but you are subjecting your opponent to a slow and painful death by 1,000 cuts. One particular item synergy you should be aware of is with Mage Slayer. This item makes your attacks apply a debuff that reduces a target's outgoing spell damage, as well as taking some chip damage over time. With your Sleight, you can slap the debuff on multiple targets with one cast. This ability also procs things like Maelstrom and Crit. Right now, he's pretty good in general, but he'll always be good against illusion heroes and squishy myths that rely on their mobility to stay alive, like Queen of Pain. His greatest enemy is Lockdown, so if the enemy has a lot of silences and stuns, it's not the best Ember game.
Huskar.
The prototypical Unga Bunga mid laner Huskar is a pub stomper that sacrifices his own HP bar to deal insane damage. His innate means he is a league champion. He has no mana bar and all mana costs are deducted from his health instead. Inner Fire is your nuke, dealing damage around Huskar, pushing enemies away and silencing them. Shard lowers its cooldown and causes it to slow enemies while also healing Huskar for a portion of the damage dealt. Burning Spears allows Huskar to ignite his normal attacks with his own fucking blood. Isn't that just metal? Each Burning Spear thrown drains a bit of Huskar's health and applies a stacking debuff of burn damage to the enemy, hurting more the higher the stacks. Berserker's Blood gives Huskar extra attack speed, regen, and magic resist based on his missing HP. This means Huskar wants to be low, which is perfect because all of his spells and items have a health cost. Note that the regen he gains is a percentage of his max strength. Life Break is Huskar's ultimate. He dives at an enemy, dealing current health damage to both the target and himself, heavily slowing their move and attack speed. During the leap, Huskar is also debuff immune and has increased magic res. Scepter increases the cast range while also applying a taunt to the enemy, forcing them to take no other action than attacking Huskar for a short period of time. It's a great form of pseudo CC on a hero that lacks it and worth buying. His Bloodbath facet causes Life Break to slow enemies around the primary target, while his Novel Transfusion facet causes it to heal allies around the target. Take the former because ain't nobody picking Huskar to fucking heal. For talents, Inner Fire duration at 10, Burning Spears DPS at 15, Berserker's Blood regen at 20, and Life Break damage at 25. Hu Tao boasts insane single target fire damage at the cost of his own health thanks to his Burning Spears. He's a high risk, high reward character that faces danger head on and goes, nah, I'd win. It's worth noting that because of this, he doesn't need to be around with a healer, but he benefits so much from death prevention. Huskar Dazzle and Huskar Oracle are some amazing combos if your support can play them. Pick Huskar if you're a Giga Chad, except if you're against AA, Doom, Necrophos, Viper, and Illusion heroes.
Invoker.
Invoker is one of the most mechanically demanding heroes to play because of his potential to use 10 spells in a single teamfight. His innate is Mastermind, giving Invoker a bit of experience upon denying a lane creep. Instead of leveling spells and stats, Invoker levels his Orbs, Quas, Wex, and Exhort, which are blue, pink, and orange respectively. He then invokes the combination of whatever orbs he has to create one of his spells. The orbs also grant Invoker passive bonuses, and these change depending on his chosen facet. Agnostic causes Quas to grant a damage over time debuff on his autos, Wex to give attack speed, and Exhort to deal extra damage, while Elite Elitist causes Quas to give his attacks flat lifesteal, Wex to give move speed, and Exhort to apply a debuff that increases the target's incoming spell damage. Note the agnostic passive bonuses apply to all of your auto attacks regardless of what orbs are out, but the Elitist effects are dependent on your active orbs. I'm no Invoker player, so I can't actually tell you which one is better, so maybe someone can help me out in the comments. And now we get to his spells, and I'm gonna have to slow down. Triple Quas gives Cold Snap, a targeted debuff that causes an opponent to be mini-stunned momentarily upon receiving an instance of damage. The mini-stun also deals extra damage and heals Invoker. 2 Quas 1 Wex gives Ghost Walk, Invoker's escape tool. He slows nearby opponents, gives himself bonus regen, and modifies his speed based on his level of Wex. 1 Quas 2 Wex gives Tornado, which forces an enemy into the air, dispelling buffs and making them invulnerable, while also dealing damage when they land. Triple Wex gives EMP, a charged AoE blast that burns mana upon detonation, deals damage based on mana burned, and gives a portion of that mana to Invoker. Shard upgrades this ability to pull enemy units closer to the center before it detonates. 2 Wex 1 Exhort makes Alacrity, a targeted buff that gives bonus attack speed and damage to your chosen ally or yourself. 1 Wex 2 Exhort makes Chaos Meteor, which deals damage upon contact and applies a debuff that deals damage per second. Triple Exhort is Sunstrike, a global spell that deals pure damage in an area after a brief delay. The damage is spread evenly upon targets in the area, so the less targets you hit, the more damage they take. Scepter allows you to double tap this spell to create a Cataclysm, summoning 2 visible Sunstrikes upon every enemy on the map. It also improves the levels of your orbs by 1. 2 Exhort 1 Quas creates Forge Spirit, a controllable unit that deals damage and removes enemy armor. Eventually, you'll get 2 of them. 1 Exhort 2 Quas creates Ice Wall, which is sneakily Invoker's best spell, creating a wall of ice in front of him, heavily slowing targets that attempt to cross the wall while dealing damage every second. And finally, Quas Wex Exhort creates Deafening Blast, a wave of damage that also applies a knockback effect and disarms targets. For talents, NATO cooldown at 10 because Ice Wall is mainly used for the slow anyway, Cold Snap cooldown at 15, Chaos Meteors at 20, and Radial Blast at 25. Here are a few basic combos as Invoker to help get you started. Tornado EMP is a classic one, throw enemies into the air and upon landing they lose mana and take a lot of damage. Throw in a Cold Snap as well upon landing for even more lockdown. Cold Snap Forge Spirit can deal some serious damage to a single target while you also throw in your auto attacks. Once you're comfy with this, include Alacrity as well to further increase your DPS. Ice Wall Sunstrike is an underused combo, but it makes landing your Sunstrikes incredibly easy. Seriously guys, use Ice Wall, not enough Invokers do. Chaos Meteor into Deafening Blast. This is a bread and butter combo for just killing people. Invoker is a one-man army in terms of his spells, but is even better with friends. Don't just combo off of your own abilities, but try to combo off your teammates as well. Catachrono is a free team fight win, Cold Snap plus any dot spell is a serious war crime, and always slap Alacrity on your carry. Invoker's biggest counter is his atrocious early game. If the enemy knows how to abuse an Invoker, you're kinda just screwed, so play defensively until you're strong, anticipate ganks, and get ready to ping your teammates when you're getting dived down mid.
Keeper of the Light.
Cuddle makes a reappearance because in recent years, he's made a resurgence into the meta as a mid laner. His Q shoves waves incredibly well, allowing him to control runes and impact side lanes, and his Solar Bind slows people to a halt from great distance. You abuse your insane ult form cast range and buy E-Blade Dagon and just make a living off of deleting people's HP bars and never getting caught because you're always in the back and move faster than the light you keep. Remember to buy Scepter too, it's great in a team fight. For talents, take Illuminate cooldown at 10, Chakra cooldown at 15, Spirit Form duration at 20, and Illuminate damage at 25. Leshrac James is weird. When I first started playing Dota 2, he was mainly used as a support, and back then, you wouldn't even level his ultimate. Now he's a terrifying mid laner that just refuses to fucking die. His innate gives him a bit of bonus AoE on his spells and items, the higher his intelligence. His Chronoptic Nourishment facet also gives him a bit of mana every time he hits an enemy with an attack. Split Earth is his CC tool, summoning spikes to hit an area after a brief delay. Enemies hit by these spikes take damage and are stunned. Shard makes this ability repeat in the same location a few more times with a delay in between each spike wave. Each time, the radius of the spikes gets a bit bigger. A must-have Shard, a great area denial tool, and amazing for holding high ground. Diabolic Edict causes the area around Leshrac to erupt in explosions to deal damage to units and buildings. The explosions will spread evenly among present units and structures, thus the fewer units available, the more damage they will take. Misanthropy increases the DPS of the spell, but disables it from hitting buildings. It's honestly pretty decent, but with it, you just won't have any meaningful way of sieging towers. Lightning Storm summons a shock that bounces from unit to unit. Each unit hit by the shock is slowed and takes a bit of damage. Pulse Nova is his ultimate. It is a toggled ability that acts as a damage aura that deals damage every second. This ability, when turned on, also drains Lesh's mana, so be careful not to keep it on for too long. Scepter gives him Nihilism, causing himself and all nearby units to become ethereal, preventing them from attacking, slowing them, and making them more vulnerable to magic damage. In turn, Lesh's speed is increased during this ability, and he does not take amplified magic damage. For talent, mana regen at 10, this hero chews through mana and every little bit counts. Lightning Storm damage at 15 for better farming and fighting, Pulse Nova damage reduction at 20 because you deal more damage by living longer, and Pulse Nova Lightning Storm at 25 for even more chaos. Lesh is a massive force to be reckoned with in the mid lane due to his insane magic damage output. He's also a sustained tank that thrives off being able to live long engagements. You might think that BKB is enough against him, but it rarely ever is, simply because he has the tools to outlast it. Lesh destroys armor stackers and illusion heroes alike and absolutely feasts on squishies. He's not without his counters though. He needs to be right next to you to deal damage, and because of the nature of his kit, he has no real way of getting on top of long range carries like Drow and Sniper, who can play keep away from his Pulse Nova and Edict. Anti-Mage is also a good pick because he can withstand your magic onslaught, burn your mana, and blow you up. Lesh is one of those heroes that's in and out of the meta, and when he's strong, he's terrifying. Pick him especially during those times.
Lina.
A glass cannon on two fronts, Lina is a lane dominator that can either become a magic damage monster or a rapid fire right clicker depending on what your team needs. Her innate is Fiery Soul, giving her a move and attack speed boost every time she hits an enemy with her spells. This stacks up, and every time you get a new stack, it refreshes the duration of all the old ones. Under normal circumstances, this ability lets you get up to 7 stacks because she's HOTT-OGO. Shard makes her spells deal more damage per stack as well. This innate can be leveled like a regular ability. Her slow burn facet makes all of her spells deal a bit more damage, but instead of dealing burst damage, they're dealt over time instead. You might think this is meh, but it means she doesn't get cucked by raindrops anymore. Dragon Slave is her Q. She shoots out a fire dragon to deal damage in a line in front of her. Light Strike Array is her W and CC tool. After a brief delay, she summons a pillar of flame to blast and stun enemies caught inside the target area. Laguna Blade is her ult, a point-and-click outplay button that deals a fuck ton of damage. Thermal Runaway gives her a fully stacked passive plus a bit of extra. Scepter grants Lina the Flame Cloak ability, giving her free pathing and increasing her spell damage and magic res. It also gives her max Fiery Soul stacks upon use. For talents, it depends on what you want to play her as. Take Slow Burn for Magic Lina and Thermal Runaway for Hitter Lina. Dragon Slave cooldown at 10 for Magic Lina or damage for Hitter Lina, LSA damage at 15 usually, Laguna cooldown at 20 for magic and fiery stats otherwise, and Laguna Barrier for magic and crit for Hitter at 25. Like I said, you can either play Lina as a Pyromaniac, burning everything in sight with your immense magic damage, or as a rapid fire right clicker, using your spells merely to keep up your Fiery Soul stacks. Regardless of how you want to play her, this Hellfire Hellbitch deals a massive amount of damage either way. She's easy enough to play and pretty self-sufficient, so she's a great pick for new players, unlike these next two heroes, starting with
Lone Druid.
Lone Druid has one of the most misleading names in Dota 2. He actually has his best friend follow him around the whole time. His innate and Q is Summon Spirit Bear. This allows him to summon his own pet bear that has its own special mechanics, and for the sake of saving syllables, we'll be calling him Barry from now on. Barry is a fully controllable unit that can move and attack independently from LD. He can also build and hold items and benefits from them as a universal hero would. However, if he strays too far from LD, he will be unable to attack, and if LD dies, so does Barry. Unless Barry has an Aghanim Scepter, which allows him to attack regardless of range from LD, and when LD's dead. Barry has 3 abilities. Return, which causes him to go back to LD after a brief delay. Demolish, which gives Barry bonus magic res and deal more damage to structures. And Entangling Claws, which lets him have a chance to root enemies with every auto attack, dealing damage and locking them in place. Shard gives Barry Fetch, letting him pull a target enemy, ally, or rune back to Lone Druid. And now we get to LD's abilities. First of all, if Barry dies, Lone Druid takes a bit of damage himself. Spirit Link provides LD and Barry with bonus attack speed, as well as sharing a percentage of their armor. Also, Barry's attacks will heal LD. The Bear With Me facet increases the shared armor percentage and allows LD's attacks to heal Barry. Scepter on LD allows him to create a Spirit Link with an allied hero instead, increasing the armor and attack speed bonus. Unfortunately, Barry runs away in fear for the duration of this effect because he gets jealous and cannot act on his own unless he has his own scepter. Savage Roar is a literal get-off-me tool. LD and Barry roar in unison, causing affected enemies to run away in fear. Feared enemies will also get a move speed bonus. Shard on LD applies a basic dispel to both LD and Barry when Roar is used, as well as giving nearby allied units bonus move speed and attack speed. The Roar will also be replicated on both Barry and LD, regardless of whether one's silenced or stunned. True Form is LD's ultimate, giving him bonus armor and HP for the duration, but also turning him into a melee hero. He also gets Barry's Demolish and Roots. With the Unbearable facet, casting True Form buffs Barry instead, giving him bonus attack speed, armor, and reducing the cooldown on his root. For talents, take the health at 10, Roar cooldown at 15 for more survivability, Roar Radius for a more consistent get off me, and Spirit Link attack speed at 25. LD is a specialist hero that demands for you to have a level of familiarity with the game before being able to use him effectively. Once you're capable enough to micro 2 heroes at once, LD becomes a powerful pick that chews through towers and deals insane damage. In ultra late game scenarios, you are literally 2 heroes in one and have the ability to become a 12-slotted monster. By picking LD, you're pretty much saying to the lobby that you'll be farming for a huge portion of the early game. You might as well have a sign above your head saying gank me. Still, with good Michael skills, you're able to control runes and generally win lane as LD. But if your team is okay with fighting 4v5 for like the first quarter of the game, LD is a powerful hero that has very little counterplay once he's farmed up.
Meepo!
One of the most unique heroes in the game, Meepo is literally 5 clones of the same dude. I spammed this hero in a bunch of turbo games and he's honestly pretty fun, but I don't recommend him for new players though. Let's start with his ult, Divided We Stand. Unlike other ults in the game, Meepo can skill this at level 4. This gives him bonus magic resist and another Meepo for him to control, getting more every time the spell is leveled. Each Meepo can gain gold and experience as Meepo does and shares his levels, attributes, and abilities. However, Meepo clones can only use his boots. The Pack Rat facet allows all Meepos the ability to use an item in their neutral slot. This means you can put like a hex in your neutral item slot and all your Meepos can use it. Note that using an item on this slot causes it to go on cooldown for every other Meepo, but at only half the value. And for your innate, you also get an extra neutral item. The more Meepo facet lets him level this ability sooner and gain 1 extra Meepo at the cost of having duplicate Meepos have less of Meepo Prime's bonus attributes. Oh, and if one of your Meepos die, they all do. So, good luck. Earthbind is his Q, throwing out a net and rooting targets hit. It may seem mediocre, but note that all Meepos can cast this spell independently, meaning you can potentially lock someone down for an absurd amount of time. Poof lets him deal a burst of damage around him after a brief delay. If you select another Meepo as your target for the poof, you teleport to him. This can be used by all Meepos, dealing damage in both the departure and arrival locations. This lets Meepo get really active around the map and gives him amazing wave clear. Ransack makes his auto attacks deal a bit of extra damage to every target, healing himself and every other Meepo for a small amount. You heal more for hitting enemy heroes, so smack that bitch with your shovel. Shard gives him dig, letting each Meepo dig into the ground to become untargetable and regain a bit of health. And finally, Scepter lets Meepo Prime gather all Meepos in an area to become Mega Meepo, aka Victor Wembanyama. In this form, Meepo gains bonus stats and can fling Meepos on top of him. His net and poof are also empowered based on the number of clones he has. Most of the time though, you'll be using this as a save to ensure that one Meepo doesn't die. For talents, take poof damage at 10, Earthbind CD at 15, Ransack health unless you need True Strike at 20, and poof cast at 25. Meepo is a snowball hero preferring to get fat fast and end the game early. He peaks very early on thanks to having multiple Meepos farming the jungle, while Meepo Prime looks to gank. But because he peaks so early, he also falls off in the late game once the enemy team is able to catch up and reliably isolate and kill one of the Meepos. Because of his nature, he has quite a few counters. Magnus and Disruptor can completely eliminate Meepo's counterplay with their AoE abilities. Winter Wyvern can force one Meepo into almost certain death. Shadow Fiend and Kunkka with their AoE control and damage are also annoying to fight, but Meepo's absolute hardest counter by far is Elder Titan. While rarer than Meepo himself, this hero gains bonus damage per Meepo hit from his spirit and has a cleave talent. He absolutely destroys Meepo and makes it almost impossible for him to play the game. Pick Meepo if you want to learn how to play Meepo. And once you know how to play Meepo, pick Meepo only when it's a good Meepo game. And that's it for part 1. Note that if you didn't see a hero you wanted me to talk about, I might have already covered them as an offlaner and just don't want to repeat myself. Tune in next week for part 2. Leave a like if you learned something, a comment if you want to say something, and subscribe if you haven't already. Ace out!